Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas,
Merry
everybody.
The following poem captures the essence of who Jean Bradshaw was, a woman of hospitality, as well as a woman willing to go. As I watch my mother dying in bed, I think of the life she lived. In her home, where we visited so many times, she always greeted us with a warm smile, hugs, and a home-cooked meal. We always left refreshed and satisfied. But in her home, she did not always stay, for that is not the Christian way. Two examples come to mind, yet I know many more I could find. On 9/11/2001, the enemy hit. My mom in her 70s then wasn't willing to just pray and sit. She left her quiet home to go to New York to clean and scrub in the busy city hubbub. She took her smile and helped remove the pile, to lend a hand to help heal our land. And when my sister was stricken with cancer, my mom again left her home of peace for the private battle for life that within 2.5 years would end in death, my sister's life to cease. My mom was in her 80s then. Now she lay dying at 93, her body ravaged by sickness, her strength gone, her work on this earth done. Yet one more trip to take, to go live with Jesus in the home he promised to make. We'll miss her smile, but only for a little while. Goodbye, Mom. See you on the other side.
One of my favorite things, walking this baby. Josh, can you smile at her?
It's little Stacy. Thanks, Grandma, for coming to all the games. Oh, big yawn.
Can I open it? Oh, big failure.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas,
Merry Christmas.
everybody.
Merry Christmas.
The following poem captures the essence of who Jean Bradshaw was, a woman of hospitality, as well as a woman willing to go. As I watch my mother dying in bed, I think of the life she lived. In her home, where we visited so many times, she always greeted us with a warm smile, hugs, and a home-cooked meal. We always left refreshed and satisfied. But in her home, she did not always stay, for that is not the Christian way. Two examples come to mind, yet I know many more I could find. On 9/11/2001, the enemy hit. My mom in her 70s then wasn't willing to just pray and sit. She left her quiet home to go to New York to clean and scrub in the busy city hubbub. She took her smile and helped remove the pile, to lend a hand to help heal our land. And when my sister was stricken with cancer, my mom again left her home of peace for the private battle for life that within 2.5 years would end in death, my sister's life to cease. My mom was in her 80s then. Now she lay dying at 93, her body ravaged by sickness, her strength gone, her work on this earth done. Yet one more trip to take, to go live with Jesus in the home he promised to make. We'll miss her smile, but only for a little while. Goodbye, Mom. See you on the other side.
One of my favorite things, walking this baby. Josh, can you smile at her?
It's little Stacy. Thanks, Grandma, for coming to all the games. Oh, big yawn.
Can I open it? Oh, big failure.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas,
Merry Christmas.
everybody.
Merry Christmas.
The following poem captures the essence of who Jean Bradshaw was, a woman of hospitality, as well as a woman willing to go. As I watch my mother dying in bed, I think of the life she lived. In her home, where we visited so many times, she always greeted us with a warm smile, hugs, and a home-cooked meal. We always left refreshed and satisfied. But in her home, she did not always stay, for that is not the Christian way. Two examples come to mind, yet I know many more I could find. On 9/11/2001, the enemy hit. My mom in her 70s then wasn't willing to just pray and sit. She left her quiet home to go to New York to clean and scrub in the busy city hubbub. She took her smile and helped remove the pile, to lend a hand to help heal our land. And when my sister was stricken with cancer, my mom again left her home of peace for the private battle for life that within 2.5 years would end in death, my sister's life to cease. My mom was in her 80s then. Now she lay dying at 93, her body ravaged by sickness, her strength gone, her work on this earth done. Yet one more trip to take, to go live with Jesus in the home he promised to make. We'll miss her smile, but only for a little while. Goodbye, Mom. See you on the other side.
Emma's favorite things, walking this baby. Josh, can you smile at her?
It's little Stacy. Thanks, Grandma, for coming to all the games. Oh, big yawn.
Can I open it? Can I open it? Oh, Dave's still
Good
here.
morning, good morning.
Good morning, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas,
Merry
everybody.
The following poem captures the essence of who Jean Bradshaw was, a woman of hospitality, as well as a woman willing to go. As I watch my mother dying in bed, I think of the life she lived. In her home, where we visited so many times, she always greeted us with a warm smile, hugs, and a home-cooked meal. We always left refreshed and satisfied. But in her home, she did not always stay, for that is not the Christian way. Two examples come to mind, yet I know many more I could find. On 9/11/2001, the enemy hit. My mom in her 70s then wasn't willing to just pray and sit. She left her quiet home to go to New York to clean and scrub in the busy city hubbub. She took her smile and helped remove the pile, to lend a hand to help heal our land. And when my sister was stricken with cancer, my mom again left her home of peace for the private battle for life that within 2.5 years would end in death, my sister's life to cease. My mom was in her 80s then. Now she lay dying at 93, her body ravaged by sickness, her strength gone, her work on this earth done. Yet one more trip to take, to go live with Jesus in the home he promised to make. We'll miss her smile, but only for a little while. Goodbye, Mom. See you on the other side.
Grandma's favorite things, walking this baby. Josh, can you smile at her?
With little Stacy. Thanks, Grandma, for coming to all the games.
Including what that person accomplished and the impact he or she had on people and places. Ultimately, the story of a person's life reflects the individual's legacy. I'm just going to read that one more time because sometimes I need to hear things twice. What is a legacy of a person? As we think about Mom this morning and remember her and celebrate her life, what was her legacy? It is about the richness of the individual's life, including what that person accomplished and the impact he or she had on people and places. Ultimately, the story of a person's life reflects the individual's legacy. And as I look out over all of you, I'm reminded that one of Mom's legacies is life itself, physical life. 5 children, 17 grandchildren, 24 great-grandchildren, and counting. I think there's at least 2 more on the way that I know of. You can add that up. Another of Mom's legacies I was thinking is about her math skills, because a number of us majored in accounting or finance and are still doing that kind of work. So in terms of physical life, we are Mom's legacy. And I believe she did her best to love and care for us all. And I know she'd be thrilled that so many of us were able to be here today to celebrate and remember her. So good morning again and welcome to Mom's Memorial and Celebration. And thank you, Steve and Ann, for organizing this time and place together. And if you're not aware, there is an open tribute at the end. If you have some thoughts forming in your head now, there'll be a time to speak at the end for anybody that wants to.
Good morning. I'm going to read Psalm 23 and then share a couple memories that I have of Grandma. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So as I was thinking about this, kind of an obvious memory to me that came to mind was every time we would go visit Grandma and Grandpa, we would always have like epic card games. We'd play Uno, Skip-Bo, Phase 10, and Grandma was always like, I don't know, she's real competitive, and then always watching like she and Grandpa banter back and forth was one of my favorite things about them. They were always laughing, and like Chris said too, she always made amazing meals. And then kind of a more recent memory, like after I was married, probably a year after, Alex and I went and visited Grandma and Grandpa, and it was before they were in their assisted living place, but there was a block party, and we were all sitting in like around in a circle in lawn chairs, and this poor man, he was older, and he might have been their age, I'm not sure, but it was an awful lawn chair, first of all, and he was in a driveway, and this poor man fell over, not once, backwards, not twice, but 3 times. And I laugh, it's horrible, but I laugh because Grandma, I was just watching her, and there was people helping him, of course, but it happened 3 times. And I look over at Grandma, and she's just eating her red velvet cake that she had made, and just, taking it in. And then later that night, this is the part that I will always cherish. We were sitting around her table, and we were having leftover red velvet cake, and she was cracking up about this man. She was like, he just kept falling over, and I was like, oh my gosh. But I don't know, it was just like a moment that I'll always remember that we had together, and it felt like kind of not just from my childhood, but like kind of an adult memory I got to have, like laughing with her. An unfortunate event, but I always loved Grandma's sense of humor with like those types of things. So that's what I wanted to share this morning. So.
Sings my soul, my Savior God. shouts of acclamation and take me home. What joy shall fill my heart. Then I shall bow in humble adoration and then proclaim, my God, how great thou
I'm going to read Romans 8:28 to 39 and then share a couple things. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. For those God foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. And those he predestined, he also called. Those he called, he also justified. Those he justified, he also glorified. What then shall we say in response to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own Son, but gave him up for all of us, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? Who will bring any charge against those who God has chosen? It is God who justifies. Who then is the one who condemns? No one. Christ Jesus, who died, more than that, who has raised to life, is at the right hand of God and is also interceding for us. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall trouble or hardship or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? As it is written, for your sake we face death all day long. We are considered as sheep to be slaughtered. No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, nor angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. I'm John, for those of you who don't know me. Most of my memories of Grandma go back to childhood, similar to Katie's, playing Uno with Grandma and Grandpa and sitting around their table, enjoying a meal, listening to the two of them kind of banter back and forth. I think a couple of the things that stood out to me the most when I was thinking about what to share were just Grandma's strength and her smile. I feel like she, from what I've heard, my memories and what I knew of her are a fraction compared to a lot of y'all. But I know that she was just like one of the most strong and resilient women. And I feel like from everything I've heard and seen, one of the last visits I got to take and see with her was when she was living with Chris and Karen. And there was one moment where I was amazed where I witnessed her with one leg move from her chair to her wheelchair, go to the restroom, use the restroom, get back in her wheelchair, come back and get in her chair all by herself. And I was just astounded. And I feel like she probably could have done so many things. She could have been the CEO of a business just with how smart she was. But I feel like she used all of her gifts just to love people who were close to her. So that always amazed me. And I feel like she just had one of the greatest smiles, and she had a warmth about her. And speaking of legacy, I think we all get to take part in that. And I'm thankful to be a part of this Quigg family. And I think her warmth has trickled down to all of us. And even though I don't get to see you guys very much, I just feel at home whenever I'm with you all. So those are my thoughts.
This is a good group here, and I thank you all for being here. Appreciate that. And one thing about the way Chris began our ceremony was that talking about legacy. And there's so much here with children and grandchildren and just in-laws and outlaws and that have come to be with us. But my mom, I have to share a story with you. And even though it says message in my name, I'm not going to preach a message, but I'm going to share some thoughts and that I have of my mom and how special she was to me. But I remember when I was in Iraq with the Army, she told me this herself, that she was at a Wednesday night prayer service at her church in Virginia, and she raised her hand, request prayer for me, who was in Iraq, and then I was a soldier in Iraq, and I was a chaplain. But so before Mom sat down, somebody else stood up and said, "Well, Gene, I didn't know you had a teenage son." And and she said, "No, he's in his 50s." And then somebody else stood up and said, "Good heavens, we must be desperate. We're sending 50-year-olds over to Iraq." And so even my commanding general even told me that I must be one of the oldest people over there. And I agreed with her, but she said, "But I'm glad you're here." And so, and I wanted to reiterate what, I forgot who said it before me, but after I speak, Shelby's going to come up, and Zach's going to come up, and then there's going to be an open tribute to anybody that wants to come up and share anything, any memories of Mom or anyone else. One thing about my mom is that she was so faithful to the Word of God. And the one thing she taught me from the very beginning was In the book of Proverbs, it says in the 3rd chapter, she said, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. And that was strong advice that she encouraged me to take from the scripture, and that no matter what I was going through, to trust that the Lord was going to work things out in my life, and to be anxious about nothing in the book of Philippians. Like today, we had several things planned, but this rain may have washed some of them out. But we who have planned a lot of things, we have prayed that, the Lord, we're not going to be anxious about it. We have a great place to worship here. Our church has provided a great meal for us afterwards. And so, and we're going to share with you all where we'll go from there. But we know that God has, He always provides. So, these last few weeks, I've been thinking about and praying about what I would share about my mom. And first of all, I'd like to share that my mom was an amazing person, an amazing woman. And and my mom and dad were 18 when they got married. And my mom was 20 when I was born. And I was going to say that before one person came today, I was going to say that I'm the oldest person in this room that knew my mom. But my Uncle John reminded me that that's not true. Yeah. And he is my mom's younger brother, not an only brother, right? And I know he's going to have a few things to say at the end. But my mom, one of the things I remember is when I was 7 and my brother Mark was 4 and my sister Julie was 1, my mom loaded us up on a train in Springfield, Missouri, and we traveled all the way to Seattle, Washington. My dad was in Japan at the time. He'd been ahead of us about 5 months. And so we got on a ship in Seattle and headed out. And it wasn't a cruise ship like a holiday liner. No, it was the worst kind of ship you could be on. But we got on. I was excited about it because I had a great meal that first night. Ate a lot of food. And then that next morning, I was one of the many on that ship that was holding a paper bag and throwing up. And I did that for about a week. Most of us did. But the only person that didn't get sick was my mom. She said she couldn't afford to get sick. She had to take care of the rest of us. And so we got to Japan, and it was a wonderful experience getting to Japan and seeing our dad there on the side of the shore with all the other military. And they were waving at us. They were singing. There was a band that was playing, and we were so excited to see him. I want to say this. Mom was a leader, and I don't know if it was just naturally born in her, but she was a leader. And one thing she loved being a chaplain's wife. She loved being a minister and pastor's wife, and she supported Dad, and later in life she supported Melvin Bradshaw in what he did and what they did as a couple. But they just had, she gave strength alongside of my dad and alongside of Melvin, and made them, actually blessed them. God blessed them into what they could become. But we went to Japan, and we spent 3 years in Japan, then 3.5 years in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And then almost at every stop, when she and Dad were together, Dad was promoted. Started out as a first lieutenant, ended up as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. And that doesn't just happen, but because Mom was present in his life, and because of Mom's strength alongside of Dad, that made it just every bit as possible. Then we went to Spain for a year, then back to Kansas City 3 years, and then they went to England, my whole family, for 3 years. And while they were in England, Mom became the vice president of the England PWC, which is the Protestant Women of the Chapel. Of every Protestant, membership of the Protestant Women of the Chapel. And during that same time, she was elected as vice president of the Protestant Women of the Chapel of all the European facilities and Air Force bases. So she was a leader, and I loved watching her. I loved watching her and following her in her life. And everywhere we went, I loved watching my mom and dad play cards with their friends. And I learned that they played cards for the fun of it. And I learned that I didn't have to play for money. That I watched them, and they had so much fun playing for fun. They laughed so much, and they let me sit there and watch them without being a spy for them. And so one thing about Mom, she was never too busy for her children, and she was a great cook, and she reached out to everyone. And one thing I remember is when we lived in Michigan, there was a woman who rang our doorbell with her 3 children. And she came in, and of course Mom knew who she was, but she was without food, and she and her kids were hungry, but Mom took them in. She fed them, and then she took the mother out to a grocery store, bought everything that they would need, and then just became the eyes that I saw as the Good Samaritan. And I learned that by watching them, I learned how to be a Good Samaritan. And then I married one, Anne. Now, when Mom married Melvin Bradshaw, she was 50 years old, but she continued being what God made her to be, a partner in ministry. It was just natural. She didn't have to relearn it, didn't have to work at it. She just knew how to do it. And Melvin had been a missionary for 25 years in Japan. And that aspect of who Melvin was, just Mom loved that. God led them to several churches where Melvin became pastor, and Mom was a supporting pastor's wife. And I learned that even in my ministry, and with my wife Ann, as she was able to walk up alongside of my life, my mom was the perfect pastor's wife, the perfect chaplain's wife. She never complained. And my mom was probably the one person in my life that everywhere that we traveled, and everywhere, like when we were in Japan and we were going to go to Michigan, my mom would always say, I know you're going to miss your friends, but I want you to hear this. Where we go is going to be the best place that you've ever lived. And at the moment, I probably didn't believe that, but it didn't take long for me to realize that that was true. You know, I made new friends. It helped shape me into who I was to become. And so I looked forward to each move that we made. When they were in England, I got to go over there for 2 summers after my college career. And the first summer I was there, Mom told me about this lady named Molly. And she had a dish shop where she was going to take me, and I was going to pick out different china and different dishware. And they were all seconds, which meant that each dish had an issue with, and so we would have to look closely to see where we could find, the discrepancy. And that was hard to do. But the one thing she told me about Molly is that if you act as a gentleman, and if Molly likes you, she will give you discounts. She will give you all kinds of treats as far as what you would want to have. And so the first thing we did, we walked into Molly's place, and she invited us in for tea, a cup of tea. And so we sat down and we had tea, and I had to be patient and the perfect gentleman. And so then when Molly was ready, she would say, okay, now we're ready to go look at the dishes. So I stood up and helped Molly out of her chair. And Molly said to my mom, she said, your son Steve is a perfect gentleman. And then she said, and I believe that he deserves a special kiss. So she took hold of me and she laid one on my lips. And here I was 19 and she was in her 40s. And my mom was standing behind her. And this is what my mom did. She said, she likes you. And so I was thrilled with that. One advice both my parents gave me, but my mom especially, whenever I would get into a fight or be tempted to fight physically, they would always say, walk away. Don't fight, just walk away. And so I tried that for years. And my about my 9th grade year, I got tired of walking away because they would always follow me down the street and beat me up. So I felt like there must be a better way to deal with that. And and there was a better way for me to deal with it. Now, fortunately, I prayed for my 2 sons that they didn't have to deal with that, and my grandchildren, I have probably given them the wrong advice. If somebody picks on you, tell Papa, and I will make sure they never do that again. But I know that's probably not the best advice. But one thing about my dad, he accelerated in academics. He made the best of grades. He was president of every school that he attended. And so I tried to do, imitate my dad. And so I was vice president in my senior class. I tried to make good grades, which I did. And so they taught me a lot. Now, I was older when I was able to tell my mom how much I loved her. Because through my teenage years and in through college, we butted heads a lot. And even when we butted heads, I knew I loved her. But when I got older, I was able to tell her that, and she was able to do the same to me. And there were times when I lost patience with Mom, but in the end, I was so blessed to have had her as my mother and would never have traded her for another. And one of the things, if you see her pictures out there in the foyer, wherever we moved, I had a contest with all my friends in who was the prettiest mom. And as you can tell by some of her pictures, my mom always won that contest. And my friends never knew what was coming, what hit them when they saw the pictures of my mom. But, and I always came home and I said, Mom, you won again. So I love my mom so much. She was the one who led me to Christ. And now she is with him. And one day we will be reunited. And I look forward to that, even though I look forward to staying here as long as I possibly can, because I have so many loved ones that are here. Especially my wife, my kids, my grandkids, my brother Mark, my brother Chris, and we have a special person here. You know, our youngest sister was, her name was Carolyn, and we called her Chick because she got that name when we lived in Spain as a baby. The person that worked for us as a cook and even as a laundry person called Chiquitina, which meant little girl. And one of her daughters, Sam, who was so special, she had 2 daughters, and her oldest daughter is in Europe traveling with her soccer team, I think. But Sam was able to come and be with us, and it was so good to be with Sam. But that's the thing about my mom, is that when they lived in Virginia and my sister lived in Pennsylvania. With every treatment that my sister had for cancer, whether it was for, most of the time it was for I forgot now. Huh? Yeah, for chemo. Mom, it was a 7-hour drive, and Mom would always be there to be with Carolyn, and to be with Sam, and to be with Haley, and to be with Jim. And so that always made an impression on me too. But one day, my mom, one day we will be reunited, and it will be a great day. Because at that time, even though Mom was 93, she probably could have beaten me in a race at 93. Because I'm 73, but I haven't been moving as fast as I used to. But she, maybe I could have beaten her in the hurdles. I'm not sure. But she, yeah, low hurdles, yeah. What? What? Oh, and Julie. Yeah, it's too late. I missed out. But Julie's my sister. And Julie and I had some good trips across the country to go be with our sister. And we'd always stop at Cracker Barrels, and I wanted to tell Julie that when we were waited on by Cracker Barrel people, they'd have stars on their uniforms or outfits. And it reminded me of being in the military, because they were at 0 stars all the way up to 4 stars. And there was a place in Ohio when I asked, the person who waited on us, and the only person I could see who was waiting on people had 4 stars. And I thought, man, this must be the Pentagon of Cracker Barrel. So that was impressive. But I loved my mom so much. She taught me so much, and I know it'll be a glorious day when we are reunited. And so, Mom, I love you, and no matter what you made me do when I was growing up, no matter how much we butted heads, but I love you so much. And so the next tribute is going to be given by my daughter Shelby, followed by Zach. So Shelby, you want to come up?
Good morning, or maybe good afternoon by now. No. So, as Dad mentioned, I'm Shelby, for those maybe a couple unfamiliar faces, and his oldest daughter, and I'm also the oldest grandchild out of, I forget how many Chris said, I lose track. But that's something that Grandma and Grandpa used to always remind me of every time I saw them or talked to them, was that I was the oldest grandchild. And sometimes I guess that might have its benefits, but also points out how old you are. So, but I just want to thank everybody for coming. And I know last night when I looked out over everybody at Jack Stack, I think it's truly amazing. I know we're a large family, and there's people from different states and all over, and everybody's so busy with their families and kids, but I think that's one of the things that's truly remarkable about this family, is that over the years we've just found a way to get together, whether it was just family reunions or weddings or whatever it is, and all the neat traditions that we have, and just like continuing our family wiffle ball game tomorrow, hopefully, if the weather permits. And I feel like if Grandma was here today, she would still be out there participating in some way or another. So, but just wanted to share a couple things, memories that I have of Grandma, and kind of some of it's echoing what people before me have said, but just always remember what an amazing cook she was. And also the family card games, Skip Bo, and she was very competitive. But kind of two quick little stories that I have. So last May, I was kind of hesitant at first to make the trip because I had just started a brand new job, but I'm so glad that I did. Went with Dad and Ann and Ryan and Katie and John, and we went out and to Chris and Karen's house and got to see Grandma. And even though she was in a much different state than I had previously remembered, she was still so much herself. And I know I spent a lot of time sitting next to her, and she was just so sweet. Chris had made her some family trees, and she, got confused often about who was actually there and who wasn't there. And but one of my favorite phrases that she said the couple days that we were there was, and who do you belong to? And she was asking Ryan and I, and just. But then one of my other favorite stories, and maybe you had to be there, but just it kind of shows how resilient she is and how she keeps at what she wants. But we were all talking about dinner on whatever night it was, Friday or Saturday night, and the consensus was that everybody wanted pizza. And there was, I think, a local pizza place that they were going to order pizza from. But as most people know, Grandma was also a penny pincher, and she had an Arby's coupon that she was absolutely determined to use, a buy one, get one free roast beef sandwich. And so why everybody, if you can imagine maybe 20 people in the room, I don't know, all talking about what kind of pizza we want, Grandma just kept saying, who's going to eat the other roast beef sandwich with me? And finally, Dad spoke up and was like, Mom, I'll eat the roast beef sandwich. And then she was perfectly content that they were also going to pick up her buy one, get one free roast beef sandwich. So, but then my last story, and probably one of my favorites, but I wasn't actually there to witness it, but I know we've had many laughs hearing about it. But in 2002, when I moved back from Louisville, Kentucky, we were living with Dad and Ann for a little bit while our house was being built. And we had a dog named Bogey, and she was about 4 years old, so still pretty much a puppy, and full-bred beagle. And so, they like to get out and go if they're set free. And so Grandma and Grandpa were on their way in from Virginia to visit, and I don't know where we were all going to be at, but nobody was going to be at the house when they arrived. So Dad purposely put on a big white piece of paper on the front door, whatever you do, do not let Bogey out of the house. And so mind you, Grandma was probably about 74, so it's not like she was extremely young and had fresh knees, because I think she'd had knee replacement surgery at least once or twice. But I don't know, I guess they were compelled to unload their luggage or whatever it was, but needless to say, Bogey got out, and Grandma was determined. It didn't matter how far she had to run or walk. She was not going to let that dog out of her sight. And she said even if she had to run all the way to the Royal Stadium, she was going to follow Bogey. And I think Grandpa quickly learned this was not going to be a small feat. And so he went back and got the car, and I forget how far away it was, but it was a good distance from the house. And like Bogey, you know, they run and they stop and sniff for a little bit, and the closer you get, then they dart off even further. And well, anyway, luckily some man in his garage saw her struggling and had a leash and helped her, and then eventually Grandpa found her, and they were able to load her up. So they didn't lose Bogey, but I can only imagine a 74-year-old grandma running down the streets of Raytown searching after our dog. So, but anyway, just wonderful, wonderful memories of her, and I'll always cherish our trip last year together, not only just our little family brothers and sisters and laughing along the way, but also the time that we got to spend with Grandma. So anyway, glad everybody could be here.
Good morning. For those of you I have not met, I'm Zach. I'm not as cool as Shelby. I'm the 9th grandchild, so not the first. And I think there's 17. So I'm not in the top 50%, but I'm close. But Uncle Steve asked me to share a few memories because I had the privilege to live pretty close to Grandma and Grandpa growing up a couple times in Virginia. So it was a neat experience to have them close enough to be able to come see Little League games and graduations and then my wedding eventually. So that was pretty awesome. Before I go any further, though, I don't know if Hannah's watching, my sister, but I just want to say happy 25th birthday to Hannah Jean, who's named after Grandma. Happy birthday. I think she's in Switzerland, who knows, but. Okay, back to Grandma. So I do have a lot of memories of Grandma, but one thing I definitely got from her through my dad was a love for ice cream. And we had a real special bond, so I remember we would go over their house for special occasions, Thanksgiving and Christmas and stuff like that, and she would always make a homemade Butterfinger Blizzard, and it was really amazing, and I still get it every time we go to somewhere that sells shakes, like Cookout, to remember Grandma. But she would make this homemade Blizzard, and we would have our meal, and then she would serve it to us kids in these little plastic cups, and we would be sitting at the table eating, and then me and Grandma, we would always exchange. I don't think I've told you this yet, Mom, so I'm sorry, but we would exchange this little glance, and then I would head to the kitchen, to throw away my trash like a good 8 or 9-year-old, and then she would follow behind me, and she would give me a second serving in my little plastic cup, and then I would go eat it in the garage, and then throw it away out there so none of my siblings would see it. So, sorry, Mom, I hope you're okay with that, but yeah. So when I moved away from Virginia in 2013 after finishing school, I did my best to stay in touch with her and Grandpa and call every now and then. And she would always answer the phone, but she would never call me Zach right away. It would always be one of 4 names. It would always be Steve, Mark, Chris, or Josh. And then Zach was usually the second or third option. And then she would always ask me, have you and Lindsay gone to the officers club on base and gotten connected? And then she would always finish every conversation by asking when we would have a girl. She would say, you make such beautiful boys. When are you going to have a girl? So sorry, Grandma, we still have not done that. So, but so many good memories of Grandma, and it was just I couldn't think or couldn't imagine a better grandmother to grow up with. And as my dad was talking about earlier, and thinking about a legacy of someone, what I think of Grandma is just her willingness to help other people and to serve other people. And that's already kind of been touched on, but just how she was always at the hospital serving the sick, or singing in the choir before Grandpa would preach, or even going up to New York after 9/11, like was mentioned earlier. She was always serving. And I think that is what had the biggest impact on my life, and that's what I'm trying to carry on and pass on to my kids too. So can't wait to see Grandma again one day, and love you, Grandma. That's all I have. Thanks.
Be thinking about if there's anything
Well, when I married Steve, I thought his mother was a hard act to follow, to be a pastor's wife and to cook good meals and to be as caring and helping of other people. And I knew I could never live up to everything that she did, but she was a good example for me of a pastor's wife and her helping and caring for people. And I think of her hospitality. She was, well, first of all, when our family would drive up to the door, she was always there waiting with open arms and made us feel welcome. And the other thing I think of is her humor, her sense of humor. And we happened to be there. It was on her birthday. The doctor had told her, Mrs. Bradshaw, and he got down on his knees, and we went with her to the doctor that day. And he got down on his knees and said, I hate to tell you this, but I'm going to have to take your leg, because she had that infection that wouldn't go away, and we tried everything, and months had gone by, and she still had this infection. And he was a very humble doctor, but he told her, I'm going to have to take your leg. And so, she just accepted that, at least outwardly. It seemed like she accepted that. And then on her birthday was the day they took her leg. And the next day, or that day later on, I can't remember when, later on after she came out of ICU, we were beside her in her bed. And this is her strength, too. She was, she was fighting all the things that people have to go through, losing a limb, the fake feeling of it being there, and she needed to scratch it and stuff. But anyway, one of their pastor friends came in, and I know you all have heard about him. They called him Rat. It was a weird name for a pastor, but somehow they called him Rat. And he had a great sense of humor, and he comes over and greets Mom, and she's laying in the bed there, and she said, Rat, I'd give you a kiss, but Melvin's insanely jealous. And Rat looked over at Melvin. He said, well, I knew he was insane, but I didn't know he was jealous. And so they were always going on like this. And this was just after her surgery, her leg being gone, And I think of other times, just she'd tell a joke or something. I think, ooh, boy, that's a little, I don't know whether I would say that. But it was always on the verge of being not too appropriate. But anyway, I loved her and I appreciated her. And I wanted to read something to you that I asked LaWanda, and most of you met LaWanda, if she wanted to say something about Mom. And this is what she wrote. Mrs. Bradshaw was a sweet, humble, phenomenal woman, and I never want to forget how strong she was. She loved her family unconditionally, and I admired her for that alone. She read so many books that I couldn't even believe. No matter what she went through, she never complained. I pray that I can be at least half of the woman she was. I want to thank you all for allowing me to take care of your loved one and getting to know her. Because to know her was to love her. I don't think that she ever met a stranger. When she was switching doctors, she had me go to the doctor's office to get the paperwork, and they told me that I could fill it out. I lost my notes. Oh, somebody, I need help. Where's my son-in-law? Or my son? Let's see, I'm sorry. They told me I should put it in my notes. Now I've lost it. Because I held my finger on it too long. I'm so thankful. Or Brian or John or somebody help me find it.
Is it in your notes?
Uh-huh.
Hey, girl.
Oh, right there. Thank you. I'll not put my finger on it. She said, I don't think she ever met a stranger. And then she tells about going to get this paperwork. And they said, if you were her daughter, you could fill this out for her. And so she comes back and tells Mom that she said she has such a great sense of humor that once I got there, I said, Mrs. Bradshaw, they say that if I was your daughter, that I could fill out the paperwork for you. So she said, LaWanda, you told them that I was your mom? You could have told them that I was your mom, and when I went there, I would have told them that you had a different dad. And we laughed so hard. I miss her warm and sweet smile that was always so inviting. I only knew her for 5 years, but it felt like a lifetime. So I can only imagine all the memories and all the love that you all have for her. And you are in my thoughts and prayers today. So, you know, LaWanda became your mom's best friend. And she was there for her, and they laughed together and cried together. And so I was thankful for her. And I'm thankful for you letting me share your mom. Because my mom died shortly after we were married. And so she became like a real mom to me, and I appreciate that. And I see her in all of you. And the love for ice cream through every child. And just, you all have such great sense of humor. And that came from your mom. And I appreciate that you can laugh through the tears and you can find the joy in that, in anything that you're going through, and you're all strong. And you got that from your mom, too. So I think of her now, that she's, when we get to heaven, she's going to be there waiting for us with open arms like she was when we drove up to the house with Jesus. And so thank you.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Good morning, good afternoon. If some of you don't know me, I'm Ralph. I'm Julie's husband. Now, I'm a newcomer to the family, probably 20 years or so. And I haven't got to meet Jean that often. I don't know some of the stories that you know, but I've been to several of the family reunions. And I can guarantee you that her body or her soul may be gone, but her energy's still here, because I see it all the time. I see it in Julie. She walks around, her face expressions, and she'll do things at the house, and I'll go, Jean, you got to stop that, Jean, you know. And sometimes if you ever miss her, you just need to talk to your sister, because I'd guarantee you, she's like your mom. In spirit and everything, she's got the same face expressions. So that's basically all I have to say, but I'm glad to be part of your family.
Yes. Shout out to Hannah Jean. Happy birthday. So exciting. Good morning. So glad to see all of you. Seems like just the other day we were doing this for Pops in Melbourne. So, you know, when I got saved about 30 years ago, I knew I was a sinner. And then I got married and had kids, and I knew they were sinners. But then when your in-laws move in, you realize you're a wretched sinner. And that's my story. No. My name is Karen Quigg. I have been married to Chris Quigg for 32 years. You know, and I have the privilege to tell you a little bit more about Grandma at the end. And that was probably one of the most challenging and rewarding situations that we had ever been in. And as Pops used to say, caretaking is a blessing and a burden. Amen? Amen. So the first time I met Mama Jean, it was in the fall of 1989. And her and Melvin were living in Naruna. And I walked into the house, and Chris and I had just been in a pretty horrific car accident. So I was drugged up, and I'm not quite sure where that fits in. But I remember her sitting in a rocking chair with a box on her hand in her lap, and she proceeded to read these letters that Melvin had written to her. So right away, I knew she was very much in love with this man, and she loved her family. And so it's been a 32-year journey of getting to know her. And then, you know, we had the privilege to live in New England, and they loved coming up there. We'd go to New York City and Long Island and take the ferry. We would have, what were they called? Fat-bellied clams, I think, and cold days in Rhode Island. And, you know, as people have all said, she was just a joy to get to know, always very pleasant, always very helpful. Now, right, ladies, maybe we can all say and agree, she never really let us in her kitchen, though, did she? No, she never did. But I more than welcomed her in mine. I was like, sure, if you want to help, that'd be great. So just very generous with a servant's heart, and I really needed that, you know, to be very transparent. I've had a mother wound, and so when we came together, you know, sometimes men tend to marry women like their mom, and so when we had the privilege for her and Pops to move in 2019, you know, there was some challenging times because, you know, we were no exception. We were kind of a lot alike. We were strong-willed and stubborn and decisive and women of grit and grace, and kind of like two alpha males at times. And so, anyway, I just want to talk about, so in 2007, we moved back down to Virginia, to Lynchburg, Virginia, and we learned how to do life together. Right? And so we lived a little over an hour from them, and so we were just getting to learn how to do life and get to know them better on a regular basis, which eventually led to the phone call on Friday, July 12th, 2019, asking us to visit them in their assisted living on the 13th, which eventually led to the question on the 13th, which eventually led them to move in the following Friday on the 19th, which led to Chris and I going to CNA school starting the following Monday, the 22nd. So what a whirlwind, right? That was huge. But some new assignments are best in a whirlwind because you're not quite sure what's happened, and all of a sudden you've got to just, for us, depend on the Lord and figure things out. But it was really God's perfect timing. Chris and I did not have school contracts for the following year, and so that became our assignment for the next 2.5 years. And honestly, we became the students, you know? We really got homeschooled by the Holy Spirit. We had to surrender, and it was really a time of joy and a lot of brokenness. And I don't know how many of you have had the privilege to be caretakers, but it is a challenging job on many aspects. And but you know, she was a trooper, as we've all heard today, and she never fussed really too much, no real complaining at all. I'm just humbled. I was humbled to be around her and listen to her, and she's very complimentary. I remember one of the first meals we served was, I think I made shrimp scampi, and you know, I'm a skeptic from New York, so they were just like, oh, this is so great, this is better than Olive Garden, and I was like, oh, I've never heard this before about my cooking, so, you know, and our home is small, and she never complained. Like talking about John when he said, she got in her wheelchair and she had to scoot around the chair, and we usually had to move Melvin's chair for her to get into the bathroom, and she just was a trooper, and it was hard, for many of us, right? When we move, it's hard. They left behind this little town of South Boston that they poured their heart and soul into for over 30 years. But they weren't that far away, and they did have a lot of friends and family they would call and visit, but it was hard. We got to see the end, and that was hard. And so our choices, leave a legacy. And I'm thankful that Mama Jean, I don't know, I just found this out, so I know you all don't know, but she made a choice to call our daughter Hannah, who was living in Washington, D.C. at the time, and she asked if her and Grandpa could move into her bedroom before she asked us. So I didn't find that out until later in life. But that choice allowed us the privilege, to be with her in a home, and it really turned into a beautiful thing. And especially with 2020 on the horizon, that was huge. And I think that was such a blessing for all of us to have those. It spared us a different kind of heartache. And I'm just going to take a moment and be real personal here, because there was heartache at times between her and I. There was challenging times and challenging conversations, absolutely, through both of us. It's mind-boggling to have a woman that you love and respect, suddenly kind of acting like a rebellious teenager. Like, what do I do with this? And then in those final days, being more of an infant. And so I won't discuss the times that we had to work through some really, really hard conversations, but I will tell you about God's grace and his forgiveness and repentance, and how he changed my heart and her heart, and we grew tender toward one another through these hard conversations. And then, maybe there's someone here you need to forgive or to let go of a grudge. And so it was a very pruning time for me personally to do this assignment. I remember one day we had an argument, and I just didn't want to go back in the house. It was a small house, and I just didn't want to go back in there. And I sat outside. I'm a stubborn woman at times, and I was tired, I was worn out, and I knew the conversation that we were going to have again. And I also had to make dinner. So that was really practical. I had to go in. And she always sat right next to the kitchen. So, we went in, and we just had that conversation. And as we all had to adapt and adjust to being family, we decided, the four of us, to make it a discipline that we would try the best we could to reconcile, if need be, before we all went to bed. And I know that was kind of new for them, maybe. I remember Pop saying something like, I can't believe we kind of had a little argument in the morning and now we love each other at night. And I was like, yeah, we're going to do it that way, right? So I know she loved all of you. She was so grateful after you called or visited. I'm sorry we didn't get her a new phone, because that was really, I could hear the frustration on all of your end, because she couldn't hear you a lot. But and then when Pops died, she was a good, godly wife to the very end. She would hold his hand, get a little tender, and she would kiss his forehead, and she just stayed right by his side until he went to heaven. And then life got really hard after Pops died. She just kind of gave up. And she lasted, 9 months. But she still read, and she still loved talking to you. And Emily pretty much called every day. Everybody remember Emily from Halifax. And then she loved talking to John. She was so thankful to reconcile with you or reconnect. I had the pleasure of reading missionary books to her after breakfast. We read Lottie Moon and Amy Carmichael and Clara Barton. And one day she said, I always wanted to be a missionary. I never knew that before. So, but as the week started to come and go, Chris and I noticed a depression settle on her. She really wanted to go to heaven. And so Chris and I were given another opportunity to prepare someone to meet their maker. And that's a very sobering job. It's a very sobering assignment. And in those last weeks, she just would cry out to Jesus. And she just wanted to go. It was time. And so we were so grateful. We were so grateful for the tremendous peace that Chris and our family had of knowing that without a doubt she was going to heaven. And she knew it too. It made all the difference. And, I just hope all of you have that hope and that place. It's prepared for you. It is. And it's something to really be thought about. And I wanted to read this. Ecclesiastes 12. Don't let the excitement of youth cause you to forget your Creator. Honor Him in your youth before you grow old and say, life is not pleasant anymore. Remember Him before the light of the sun, moon, and stars is dim to your eyes, your old eyes, and rain clouds continually darken your sky. Remember Him before your legs, the guards of your house, start to tremble, and before your shoulders, the strong men stoop. Remember Him before your teeth, your few remaining servants, stop grinding, and before your eyes, the women looking through the windows see dimly. Remember Him before the door to life's opportunities is closed and the sound of work fades. Now you rise at the first chirping of the birds, but then all their sounds will grow faint. Remember Him before you become fearful of falling and worry about danger in the streets, before your hair turns white like an almond tree in bloom and you drag along without energy like a dying grasshopper, and the carperberry no longer inspires sexual desire. Remember Him before you near the grave, your everlasting home, when the mourners will weep at your funeral. Yes, remember your Creator now while you are young. So, anyway, I know Mama Jean would love to see all of you in heaven, and that's where she is. And I do want to end with just a shout out to those that came to help us physically. Barry and Pilar were able to help us a little bit, and Ken and Robin, and even Mark and Barbara, and they gave their time to come give us a break, and I'm just we're so thankful for that. And our children locally, Abby and Jordan and Hans and Josh, they were consistent caring helpers, and it really changed our family, learning how to serve and be available. And they rarely grumbled at all or complained, and they always came when necessary. But just as I end, the real hero to me is Chris. Babe, for 2.5 years, I watched you just grow deeper into a servant of God as never before. Your unlimited patience astounded as well as exasperated me at times. Your gentle, strong hands always willing to do the next chore no matter what and never complain. I watched you become even more real, like with your emotions, as you dealt with the many different and difficult stages of caretaking your mom and Melvin. There was a God sense of humor, too, for a moment. Like when our kids were young, what did husbands usually say? Oh, did they get up in the night? And you go, yeah, they did. He didn't hear a thing. But I'm telling you, this time I would say, did your parents get up? And he'd be like, yeah, they did. And I didn't hear a thing. So that was really, but you lovingly and kindly spoke and encouraged them and comforted them all the doctor's appointments, the pharmacy runs, the ER visits, all the outings. Oh, yeah. Remember when we enrolled them in the YMCA? January of 2020. Okay, it was humbling for us because we were like, oh, it's a chair class. It's 45 minutes. So we're like, okay, we'll stay and do it. But I'm telling you, we were a little tired after that 45 minutes. But it was one and done. It was probably the shortest membership the Y has ever had because they only went once, yes. So thank you, Chris. I'm humbled and grateful that we were able to do this assignment together, and I look forward to our next one. And as Coach Boone was told, you were the right man for the job. So I'm just so humbled and thankful to be part of this family, too. Thank you.
Karen, it's not nice to make people cry before they come up. Now, I'm Casey Quigg. I'm number 2 of 17. I'm Mark's son. Live in Fort Worth, Texas. I might be one of the outlaws that Steve mentioned earlier. I'll get back to my dad here in a minute. This slot was actually supposed to be for Grandma's favorite grandkid, but Jordan wasn't able to come. And, I'm sure he sends his regards, but, it's, so you get me. To try to come up with a few thoughts on Grandma, I mean, she, in her 90s, and I knew her for 43 years, and it's hard to pinpoint anything in, anything like real specific that, that rose above anything, any of the other memories. So I got to thinking more about her character, and I think Grandma's real superpower was that she had the ability to remember and respect and love people that she didn't have to. And, some people call that like, the unconditional love, something along those lines. I think sometimes with Grandma, it just went all the way over into just putting up with people, which I'll get to that here in a minute too. So the first, so there's 3 main people or groups of people that I can think of that she really displayed this character trait with. The first being my mom. So my dad, like many of us Quigg men, did not get it right the first go around on marriage. We know who we are. We know who we are. I'm not going to name names, but I'm included, so I'm not picking on anybody. So I lived with my mom, but I saw my dad all the time growing up, and it seems like we spent a lot of trips. We took a lot of trips out to Virginia to see Grandma and everything, and this was a trait like that happened up until the last time I saw her, a couple times last year or so. But she would always take the time, sit down with me, and ask me about my mom. She'd ask me, "How's your mom doing?" We've always loved and cared for her, and then she always made sure you tell her that when you go back home. She stopped short of saying that she wanted to make a trade, that she was willing to trade Dad away and bring my mom into the family permanently. But I just kind of always got that impression. But my mom, I just as a reflection of that, my mom always echoed the same thing. So that was a street that went 2 ways on that. So it wasn't just empty words, just because Grandma didn't have to do that. I mean, she could have never said anything. She could have gone negative, which people obviously do, but that just was not in Grandma's character to do that. The second main area that I've witnessed is the relationship she had with Melvin's family. And I didn't spend a whole lot of time with Melvin's family growing up. We had a family reunion, 20 years ago, something like that, and then seeing them during Melvin's funeral. But of course, there was the tributes to Melvin, and everybody, poured out their love and respect for Melvin. But I was amazed at how many people in Melvin's family took the time to say how much they loved Jean, how much they loved, Grandma. Again, this is something that wasn't just, empty lip service. It had to be real, because they could have just remained silent. But again, it was a reflection on, them reflecting back basically the love that she showed to them. And again, she didn't consider it her family and Melvin's family. It was all her family, and that was evident. Anytime she spoke about all of her grandkids, that she meant Melvin's side too. So the third area of this of this unconditional love goes more towards the putting up with aspect of it. And that comes back to us grandkids. And I feel like that obviously she loved us because she had to and all that kind of stuff, but she did a lot of putting up with over the years. I mean, when we were real little, you know, we broke things. I broke things. Okay, it's me. I broke most of the stuff. But I know Steve loves to tell a story about me just running through a screen door that, like, it wasn't even there one time. It was about 4 or 5, something like that. And I don't think it was Steve's. Oh, I did it twice. Oh, okay. I was 2. Okay. So and then when we were a little older, I remember the raging, you know, rocking Nerf basketball games in Grandma's living room. You know, slam dunks from across the living room, and she never told us to stop, and she never yelled at us. But I know I saw her wince a few times. You know, just that we were going to break something. You know, really nice. But she always loved to just sit back and just watch us play. And sitting back and watching us play extended all the way up until the last time we all saw her, when we basically turned Melvin's funeral into a block party at Chris and Karen's house on their street. And I want to let y'all in on a little secret. We weren't fooling her at all, okay? She knew what was in our solo cups. She knew why we kept going back and forth to Ralph's Tahoe. And she certainly knew when somebody, I'm not going to name any names, Robbie, would come up to Grandma and get right in her face and plop down and say, "Hey, Grandma!" The glassy eyes, she knew. I mean, she and you know why she knew? Because she raised our parents. And she saw all that before. So just to kind of wrap up, Steve said I only had 45 minutes. So she loved just sitting back, watching us play. Even if she didn't always agree with what we were up to, she just loved, you know, being around us. And you know, we all love Grandma. That's clear. We're all going to miss her, you know, for as long as we're alive. But this really is a time, a weekend of celebration. And then, so I know later, at some point, when we all have our red solo cups with our names Sharpied on them, we can take a time to give her a proper toast. But we love her, and I love all you guys. It's great seeing y'all, and I can't wait to, you know, spend the weekend with everybody. Thanks.
Story. No. All right, so you guys did a great job talking about Grandma and describing her, so I won't bore you guys and go into more detail, but she was very generous. If I had to do top 3, very generous, very proud to be a minister's wife. I remember we saw her for Thanksgiving about 10 years ago, and she was Melvin was preaching, and I just happened to look over, and just the look on her face, it did the justice. But my favorite aspect was how funny she was. So, hope you guys are ready. I'm going to go into 2-hour stand-up comedy routine right now. And for those of you who don't know me, my name's Dave Chappelle. I'm Robbie Wood, Julie's son. The forgotten one. What I want to do actually is read it's a Mother's Day card she had. Chris and Karen, thank you. She had, and it was from her youngest daughter, Carolyn. So what I'll do is I'll start off and I'll read the card first, and then I'll read what Carolyn said, so you guys know what's what. Don't want to give any undue credit to, you know. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so it's called You're an Incredible Mother. I hope you know how lucky I feel to have you in my life. And it's not just because you're a great mother. You are. but because I really respect and admire the woman you are too. When I see how you balance family responsibilities while still pursuing all the other things that interest you, I am nothing short of amazed. There's just no one like you. You're inspiring, loving, and caring all at once. And that's why I love you so much. So that's the card. And here's Carolyn. Dear Mom, happy Mother's Day. I love you so much and am so thankful you are my mom. I don't know how I would have gotten through the last couple of years without you and Melvin too. Thanks for all you have done. I hope you have a great day. I love you so much, Chick. And I can't end on Casey inspired me with this story. Amazing how stories just pop in your head while somebody else is talking, right? So we were actually at Carolyn's funeral, and I remember Mark and probably Casey and I, or maybe it was Joseph. We're all sitting in the laundry room because that's where Jim had his beer tap. So we had the red Solo cups, and one of my funniest memories there is Grandma walks in, and Mark kind of looks around and, oh crap, there's my mom, and scurries off with his cup. So that's it.
Not sure if I can follow that, but I should have followed Karen when I. But yeah, I just had a few remarks too to what Mom, different ways she showed me love as a child and as an adult. But but also, Karen said I was the right person for the job, but she was also the right person for the job to help care for Mom and Melvin as well. Like, Mom had many strengths. She was a leader, like Steve said, and a trooper, and patience, kindness, and very servant-oriented. But I think one thing helped her was to resolve conflict. And because I was good probably at the physical part of the job, and Melvin would often encourage me, like I was, in the bathroom with him. Chris, I've done this many times, and this is you're being a servant, and I appreciate that. Mom, and Mom thanked both of them every night at bedtime. Thank you for doing this. But when there was conflict, and when you live together with somebody, you get to know them, and you're doing real life together. And Karen was able to. That's one of her strengths to. Help us resolve conflict, and we needed to do that. We had one of the biggest fights of our marriage, I think, on the front lawn during that 2.5 year period, but those things happen too. I'm glad Abby was there to help us resolve that one. But as I said earlier, and I know we're kind of on overtime here, but and I know Uncle John has got some things to say too, I believe. But I said earlier that Mom did her best to love and care for us, and we're her physical legacy, but she also left us a Christian legacy, a spiritual legacy, and some simple ways that she loved me. Going all the way back to England when I was 6-7 years old, she'd leave out 35 cents on Saturday mornings, and we could go to the matinee. Chick and I could go to the matinee. Maybe Julie joined us. I'm not sure, but it cost $0.25 to get into the theater. This is on a military base in England. It cost $0.25 to get into the movie, and then 10 cents for popcorn. So Mom would leave that for us, and I think as popcorn increased in cost, she would send popcorn with us in future years. But and she always had dinner ready after my baseball practices, and she attended my games. I was reminded of that when Shelby fed Carter after his soccer time a couple of nights ago. She'd put out treats for Chick and I after school, like a candy bar, and we look forward to that. And Julie took care of us, I think, watched over us after school. Thank you, Julie, for I was thinking being the fourth born, I didn't butt heads with Mom, like probably Steve and Mark and Julie as much. Because I think by the time Chick and I came along, she was pretty worn out. So there was a good side of that, but maybe but and also, you know, as we lived fairly close to them, an hour away for many years, she, like Ann said, she was always, you know, welcomed us at the door and, you know, gave us all hugs, and she cooked many a meal for us, and we shared that time together, and before they went into the nursing home. And just three bigger ways that she impacted my life. She took us to church, and where I could learn about Jesus. And when I was 10, I trusted Jesus as my personal Savior. And I remember the joy I experienced when coming home and announcing to the family, I believed in Jesus today, and I want to be baptized. But that was 10. And by the time I was 16, I became a rebellious teenager and a prodigal. You've heard the prodigal son story. So at 16, I was actually getting high and skipping school on a regular basis. And this is where Mom intervened in my life, and I look back and see this as an act of love. She went to my high school. I was in 10th grade. She went to high school and had my schedule changed. I was going to school all day, as you normally do, but she got it changed into a special program where I went to school half a day and worked half a day. And that helped me get through that year and through the next 2 years to graduate from high school. But if she hadn't done that, I look back and think maybe, you know, I may have gone off the cliff, dropped out of high school, or, you know, some of my friends had already done that, and, or gotten into drugs, harder drugs. She, you know, was kind of caught off guard by all that and didn't know exactly what was going on, but she loved me the best she could during my teenage years. And I didn't come back to the Lord at that point in my life, but I remember having a conversation with Mom when I was 25, and she asked me what I wanted in life. And I said, marriage and family. Now, I was one of those that didn't get it quite right the first time, as Casey said. So I was already married and divorced at 25. And I think the third big way Mom impacted my life was just seeing, I hadn't seen that with my parents. They were struggling, they got divorced. So it wasn't a real good environment to grow as a young Christian. But I was watching Melvin and Mom and watching their life. I was watching a marriage that did work. And I was watching a marriage that did have purpose, and so that was impacting me. I don't think I realized it at the time, but I was, and that's what helped. It was drawing me. God was drawing me back through their marriage, and then He would lead me to Karen, the Coast Guard. First joined the Coast Guard. I'm not sure why exactly I did that, but I did, and it worked out. God was in all that. And I'm thankful I did that, and I met Karen. We got married and had our children, and as they say, the rest is history on that. But God worked through a marriage that was working, and I'm so thankful for that. And I think that's what brought me back, or, you know, God used Mom in my life in a major way. You know, first to go to church, become a Christian, and then go through that rebellious period. And she never stopped loving me. I'm sure she was praying for me those many years as well. But thank you, Mom, for doing that. And just, so I think a verse that, like I said, I had joy in the beginning as a young Christian, then God brought me back when I was about 30 years old. I came back to Him and started, you know, getting into the Bible and learning His Word and learning how to live life His way. And a verse, Psalm 51, 12 and 13, it says, "Restore to me the joy of your salvation and make me willing to obey you. Then I will teach your ways to rebels and they will return to you." And then God put me in special education and to teach rebels, and I have seen some of them return or get to know God better and return to Him. So I'm really thankful that we were all blessed by God with a mom. Not only gave us spiritual life, but the legacy of faith and Christian faith in particular. So thank you, Mom, and I too look forward to seeing you again someday. All right. Thank you. It's very good to see all of you again.
This has been a real joy for me to be a part of your family. And you've had a lot of memories. You all came up with notes. I came up with a book. So you all sit down and relax. Okay. You talked about Jeannie being a good cook. She came from a good cook. I used to always say Mother could put a 7-course meal out on a 2x4. I mean, she didn't need to have a big kitchen, but she could put out the meals. Never had a fancy stove and all that business, but she could do some good cooking. But anyway, I wanted to go through the whys you are a family like you are. And some of these things you probably don't know about yourselves because of the heritage that you have. I did not know my mother's family at all. They all passed before. Of course, my mother was 41 when I was born, so there wasn't much of a chance, and they had all passed before I came along. Jeannie did not know her father. At about 4 years of age, her father had passed. His name was Ward Webb, and he was a preacher. Mother loved him. Even though she was married to my daddy, she loved Ward Webb. And I think it's significant how this love transferred out. Because Jeannie was the daughter of a preacher. Then when they were in Bolivar, the Baptist College in Bolivar, Jeannie fell in love with my daddy, who was 10 years younger, or 11 years younger than my mother. And she'd say, please, God, make Mama love Honey Shug. Well, it eventually happened, and my father married a cougar. I won't say that, but she married my mother, and they went off on a Wednesday night from Southwest Baptist College to Springfield, and during the Wednesday night prayer service, walked down later and got married in front of the Wednesday night crowd. Then, by the way, then she married a preacher, a chaplain, and then she had a chaplain, and then she married a missionary, and so she's had a good heritage spiritually. You have that heritage spiritually. Sometimes it's a comeback heritage, sometimes it's a continuous heritage, and sometimes better be busy about getting that heritage, because we don't know the length of our days and the times that we have. Jeannie, I always called her Elma Jean. First time I called her on the phone in the recent years, and she said, I'm Jean. She never did like Elma Jean. I'll tell you why, okay? This is the history of that. Our grandparents had a slave who stayed with them after the emancipation, who was named Elma. And she sort of resisted being named after a slave. Now, this shows you, I have lived 1/3 of the United States history. Jeannie lived 11 years longer in that time. And I think it would be good for us to understand what history has to do with your lives because of her history in that life. And so I jotted down a few notes that we might get acquainted with that. In 1899, from Liberty, Missouri, probably on the railroad through the town that we're in now, went to Springfield. My mother, Jewel, and her family left Liberty and went to Springfield, where my granddaddy was an engineer for a pencil company. That's all I've ever heard about that. They joined First Baptist Church down there, were part of the building of the old First Baptist Church, all this. They were very active in that. There was a ministry that they had in that life. Then Jewel married Ward Webb, who was a preacher. So I mentioned that. In 1905, that was when they moved to Springfield. Mama went to Central High, and then she went to SMS. And I never heard her play it, but she always told me that she played a trumpet. How many of you were in music? How many of you were in music and part of this generation? Okay? I know my son went through college on a trumpet scholarship. My daughter took at Bernal, a lot of them played the piano, sang, all this kind of thing. It missed me for some reason. Now, Elma Jean, was a good daughter. Elma Jean was a good sister. It was hard being her sister. Every time I went to school, they said, "Oh, you're Elma Jean's brother." I never lived up to that reputation. It gave me a complex, I'll be honest with you. I tried to get as far away from people who knew her as I possibly could. She went to college in Missouri. I went to Phoenix, Arizona. I was getting away from that. I got into the Army early to get away. She probably got married early. By the way, that thing about ice cream, let me tell you a little story about that. When Bob and Jean were dating, they came to this dinner at our place, and Mama, for dessert, served a big scoop of ice cream for dessert with a lot of chocolate poured on top of it, okay? Except for Bob's. It was a big scoop of mashed potatoes with chocolate poured all over it, just to see if Bob had a sense of humor. Well, he didn't know exactly how to react because he was trying to make points. But anyway, it got through that testing period. Jeannie, she was a good wife. She said she was a good everything that she did as far as I've ever heard. And in your lives, I see that. But historically, do you realize that Henry Ford thought she was a good, but see, she was born the year that Henry Ford was bringing out the A Ford, the Model A. You don't realize this in history. Now, you talked about all the joy and happiness that she was. It's hard to understand. Now, she didn't have the curls, and she certainly didn't have the dance, because she was a Southern Baptist, and it'd be better to run around the block naked than to go to a dance. But anyway, don't laugh. It was a tough time. I mean, we couldn't even ride our bicycles on Sunday afternoon when I was growing up. I mean, we had some serious responsibilities at that point. But have you ever been to the place where you forgot where you were? But when you think about who she was and wondering what she was like, wouldn't you really like to know what she was like growing up? I'll tell you what you do. You get some of these old movies with Shirley Temple in them, because Shirley Temple was born the same year that your mother was. She had joy, but Jean didn't have a script to bring it in. She didn't have the music to bring it in. Well, she had that clarinet, golly. But she did have that clarinet to bring it in. And by the way, you folks, she married Bob Quigg, who played the most useless piece of stovepipe I've ever heard, known as a bassoon, okay? And when they came to the house to practice, the clarinet and the bassoon was just about as much as this youngin' could take. No wonder I didn't like music. But she was special. And historically, God made her special and led her through generations to get her there. I don't know much further than Ward Webb. I know more about my daddy's folks because of where they came from. I can go to the graveyard. I know Ward. I've been to Ward Webb's gravesite many a time as a child, where mother cleaned it off because she still had that feeling for her. Don't forget that heritage, even with him. You didn't know him, but he contributed to your life and to mine. I don't want to further this any further, but you have a picture out there of 39 of Hudson, that they went off on a marriage trip. That was our family car, 39 Hudson. Their first car was a 38 Chevrolet, which my dad put together for them to run around in. And in 49, my folks bought them a 1949 Hudson, which would look more like a turtle on wheels. We go and see time over the vehicles, by who was president, and all these things. Go do that. And just think of 250 years of America, and she lived 90 of them. Now then, I have a challenge. You have a heritage. And every time I preach a revival, I bring this heavy on the men. Men, listen to me. I do not know when my daddy accepted Christ as his personal Savior. He never told me. I don't know where he was baptized. He never told me. My mother never told me where she was. I know it was in First Baptist Church, Springfield, Missouri. I know about when it was, but she never told me. You men, you have a responsibility. You have that responsibility to say again and again, this happened to me here, there, wherever it was. Now your dad, Bob, on 9/25/46, he was baptized. 9/25/46. You know why I know that? Because he and I were baptized together. I was 7 when I was baptized. He was a converted Methodist when he was baptized. I know that. If you didn't know it, he didn't tell you. But I'm telling you now. He was saved in 1946. He was baptized in 1946. Folks, tell your children about your heritage and let it pass on. Don't let it, some old man like me tripping up the stairs, tell you about it. Tell them yourself. I have this book up here for a reason. By the way, there's a letter in there from my wife saying how much she appreciated Jeannie packing up 2 boys and a girl to get on a train to go down to Montgomery, Alabama, where I was married to my wife, Dot. And She's been special. She's been a preacher's wife in my life. By the way, we had 17 years of dealing with her folks and my folks through what you went through. I thank you. This family thanks you, because there's no labor as in love and sometimes thankless. And I appreciate it. But anyway, this book was printed in 1922. That's the patent date on this. It belongs to you. I'm going to give it to Steve. It has my dad's name in it. He's used it. I used it in college and seminary and preparing sermons. It's Robertson's Harmony of the Gospels. It begins, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the beginning, God, through Jesus Christ, is in this family's life. In the beginning. In the beginning. Why I'm giving it to Steve is it the only thing I know of with Ward Webb's name in it. And it has my mother's name in it. Library of Mr. and Mrs. Ward W.W. Webb. And there's his signature on top. I don't know of any other place where you can have a physical heritage of what a preacher's wife named Jewel, who married to Ward Webb, who through the tragedy of death became my mother, who was the mother of Jean, who you praised at this point. We don't know the depth of all these things that are in relationships. Don't forget your relationships, and don't forget to pass them on. Don't forget. Don't forget. You might have had a rough trip getting there. It's part of your testimony. But let your kids know, because you don't want them to trip over some of the same things you've been tripped over. I've heard you talk about your trips up here. You laughed about it. You laughed about it. But make sure that you come to the point where I'm seeking God's choice in every decision of your life. For Galatians 1:10, for do I now seek to please men or God? Or if I seek to please men, I should not be the servant of Christ. She sought to please God first.
Can I open it? Oh, Dave's failure.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas,
Merry
everybody.
Christmas. Merry Christmas.
The following poem captures the essence of who Jean Bradshaw was, a woman of hospitality, as well as a woman willing to go. As I watch my mother dying in bed, I think of the life she lived. In her home, where we visited so many times, she always greeted us with a warm smile, hugs, and a home-cooked meal. We always left refreshed and satisfied. But in her home, she did not always stay, for that is not the Christian way. Two examples come to mind, yet I know many more I could find. On 9/11/2001, the enemy hit. My mom in her 70s then wasn't willing to just pray and sit. She left her quiet home to go to New York to clean and scrub in the busy city hubbub. She took her smile and helped remove the pile. to lend a hand to help heal our land. And when my sister was stricken with cancer, my mom again left her home of peace for the private battle for life that within 2.5 years would end in death, my sister's life to cease. My mom was in her 80s then. Now she lay dying at 93, her body ravaged by sickness, her strength gone, her work on this earth done. Yet one more trip to take, to go live with Jesus in the home he promised to make. We'll miss her smile, but only for a little while. Goodbye, Mom. See you on the other side.
Grandma's favorite things, walking this baby. Josh, can you smile at her?
Looks a little spacey. Thanks, Grandma, for coming to all the games. Oh, big...
Okay. Thank you all so much. I'm going to close this special ceremony with a word of prayer. Let's bow our heads. As we come before you, Lord, thank you so much for who you are, how much you love us, how much you bless us. And you have blessed us so much with Jean, Quigg, Bradshaw. She has meant so much to each one of us. And we thank you for allowing her to be on this earth for as long as you did. Because even in the last days, she continued to be a blessing. And I just thank you so much for that. Well, be with us now as we go downstairs to eat, as we fellowship with one another and love each other, as Mom would have us love each other. In Jesus' name, amen. Just go on. I think eventually you find your way downstairs. Now, Ann and I know how to get down there. And Tom knows how to get down there. So follow